You have the job, the degree, or the business you always prayed for. But instead of feeling victorious, you are sitting at your desk terrified. Deep down, a quiet, relentless voice is whispering that they are going to find out you are faking it. You are waiting for the other shoe to drop, convinced that any day now, you will be exposed as a total fraud. You overprepare, you second-guess your decisions, and you attribute your hard-earned achievements to mere luck or timing. This agonizing state of mind is widely known as imposter syndrome, and it is silently sabotaging the brightest minds in the world. But what if I told you that mainstream psychology only understands half of the equation? Imposter syndrome is not a character flaw, a lack of intelligence, or a permanent personality trait that you must simply manage. It is nothing more than a faulty assumption that has been deeply wired into your subconscious mind, and it can be entirely overwritten. To permanently cure this feeling, we must first deconstruct what is actually happening inside your brain when that panic sets in. Imposter syndrome is fundamentally a self-concept issue, meaning it stems directly from the story you internally tell yourself about who you are. Your self-concept is the subconscious blueprint of your identity, built over years from past experiences, early childhood rejections, and societal conditioning. The crisis of the imposter occurs when your external reality suddenly outpaces this internal identity. Imagine a graph where one line represents your external success, promotions, accolades, new responsibilities, climbing sharply upward. Now imagine a second line representing your internal identity, which remains completely flat, anchored to an older, smaller, and less capable version of yourself. That massive, terrifying gap between the two lines is exactly where imposter syndrome lives and breeds. Your conscious mind is experiencing the success of the present moment, but your subconscious mind is screaming that this reality does not match its outdated internal blueprint. Because the subconscious mind's primary job is to keep you safe and consistent, it views this new level of success as a dangerous anomaly. It feels exposed, so it generates severe anxiety to try and force you back into your old, familiar comfort zone. This is why you cannot simply logic your way out of this gap by staring at your impressive resume or reading your glowing performance reviews. Your subconscious mind does not care about logic, rational arguments, or pieces of paper on a wall. It only cares about the identity it has been programmed to accept as absolute truth. This brings us to a radical, permanent solution found not in modern corporate seminars, but in the teachings of a mid-20th century mystic named Neville Goddard. Neville was a pioneer of esoteric thought who taught a strikingly simple, yet profound concept: imagination creates reality. Long before neuroplasticity became a buzzword in modern science, Neville argued that the human mind was the singular cause of the phenomena of life. His core philosophy rested on a spiritual and psychological law that governs all human experience, known as the law of assumption. The law of assumption states that whatever you assume to be true and feel to be true, your subconscious mind will automatically accept as fact and harden into your physical reality. Neville challenged the very fabric of how we perceive life, asserting that the physical world is merely a mirror reflecting our dominant internal states. He believed that the human imagination is not just a tool for daydreaming, but the actual creative force of your personal universe. Neville famously taught the principle that you do not get what you want in this life, you get what you are. You can desperately want to feel confident, and you can want to belong in the room, but the subconscious only manifests your current state of being. If you deeply identify as someone who is unqualified, your subconscious will inevitably project that reality outward into your environment. It will cause you to stumble over your words in high-stakes meetings, procrastinate on major projects out of fear, and constantly seek external validation. It effectively turns your internal fear of being a fraud into a tangible, external self-fulfilling prophecy. Therefore, to conquer imposter syndrome, we must completely abandon the logical, forceful approach of trying to prove our worth to ourselves. You cannot fight the feeling of being a fraud by arguing with it, because arguing with it implies that the threat is real. Instead, you must use the law of assumption to bypass the conscious mind's resistance entirely. This means actively assuming the feeling of already being the confident, capable, and masterful person you wish to be. You do not try to become the expert at some point in the future. You must psychologically step into the shoes of the expert right now, in this very moment. Neville taught that an assumption, though initially false, if persisted in, will harden into fact. By repeatedly claiming the state of the confident professional in your imagination, you force your subconscious mind to update its internal blueprint. As you embody this new assumption, the flat line of your internal identity begins to rise, rapidly closing the gap with your external success. The friction between who you are and what you have achieved finally disappears. Once the subconscious accepts this new assumption as its baseline truth, the imposter anxiety instantly vanishes because there is no longer a contradiction in your mind. You no longer feel like you are playing a part. You simply exist as the person who naturally belongs exactly where they are. This is the true power of the law of assumption. It does not fix the imposter, it entirely replaces them. Before we can implant this new, powerful assumption, we must first clear the slate and understand exactly what we are dealing with. Your actionable takeaway for today is a foundational exercise called the identity audit. Grab a pen and a piece of paper and sit in a quiet room for just 5 minutes. I want you to write down the exact fraudulent thoughts that loop in your head on a daily basis. Do not filter them, and do not judge yourself for having them. Write down specific phrases like, "I don't belong in this boardroom," "I just got lucky with this client," or "everyone else here is naturally smarter than me." By putting these phantom fears onto physical paper, you drag them out of the shadows of your subconscious and into the harsh light of conscious awareness. You strip them of their paralyzing power simply by observing them objectively. You are looking at them not as undeniable facts, but as old, outdated lines of code that are running on a useless loop. Keep this list somewhere safe, because it is the exact map of the internal blueprint we are going to systematically dismantle and destroy. You are finally taking inventory of the illusion that has held you back. We have identified the illusion, but understanding the problem is only the very beginning of your transformation. In part 2 of this series, we are going to dive deep into the fascinating intersection of neuroscience and the mysticism of your subconscious mind. We will look at exactly how these imposter thoughts were programmed into your brain in the first place, and why your logical mind is completely powerless to stop them. We will uncover the hidden mechanics of your own mind so you can finally take back the controls. Subscribe so you don't miss it, and get ready to permanently rewire the way you experience your own success. Why can't you just talk yourself out of imposter syndrome? You have the degrees, the track record, and the undeniable proof of your competence. Yet, when the panic hits, all that logic dissolves into thin air and leaves you feeling entirely helpless. The reason your rational arguments fail is that your logical mind is not the one actually running the show. Think of your mind as a massive iceberg drifting in a dark ocean. The tiny, visible tip above the water is your conscious, analytical mind, while the colossal, hidden mass beneath the surface is your subconscious. You are trying to steer the entire iceberg by pushing on the tip, completely ignoring the million tons of ice dictating the current below. To understand why the subconscious exerts such absolute control over your self-doubt, we must look at how Neville Goddard defined the architecture of the mind. He described the mind using a powerful biological analogy, dividing it into 2 distinct but deeply connected parts. The conscious mind is the masculine aspect, acting as the impregnator or the initiator of ideas. The subconscious mind is the feminine aspect, acting as the womb, receiving the seed of the idea and bringing it into physical manifestation. The conscious mind chooses what to believe, but the subconscious mind simply accepts, incubates, and creates. This dynamic is crucial because the subconscious mind possesses absolutely no ability to argue, filter, or reject what it is given. It is entirely non-judgmental and will faithfully execute whatever the conscious mind repeatedly impresses upon it. If you consciously dwell on thoughts of inadequacy, fearing that you are a fraud who will soon be exposed, your subconscious does not debate you. It does not pull up your resume and remind you of your accomplishments to soothe your anxiety. Instead, it accepts the assumption, "I am a fraud," as an undeniable biological command. Once the subconscious accepts this seed, it goes to work producing a reality that perfectly matches that assumption. It generates the visceral physical anxiety in your chest, the brain fog during a presentation, and the overwhelming urge to shrink away from the spotlight. Your subconscious is not trying to sabotage you maliciously. It is simply operating flawlessly based on the blueprint it was handed. It assumes that because you feel like a fraud, you must actually be a fraud, and it aligns your nervous system to match that perceived truth. Remarkably, Neville's mystical explanation of the mind perfectly mirrors modern neuroscience and the concept of neuroplasticity. Your brain is not a static, hardwired machine, but a highly adaptable organ that physically changes based on your repetitive thoughts and experiences. Every time you have a thought, a specific network of neurons fires in your brain. As the famous neurological axiom states, neurons that fire together, wire together. When you repeatedly entertain imposter thoughts, you are literally forging a physical pathway of self-doubt inside your brain. Think of these neural pathways like a dirt road in a dense, overgrown forest. The first time you experience rejection, harsh criticism, or high-pressure expectations in childhood, a faint trail is established. Every subsequent time you doubt yourself, stress over your performance, or feel unworthy of your success, you drive a heavy truck down that exact same trail. Over years and decades, that faint trail becomes a deep, paved highway of anxiety. When a triggering event occurs at work, your brain automatically takes the path of least resistance, sending your thoughts racing down the imposter highway. This is why your imposter syndrome feels so automatic and inescapable. It is no longer just a fleeting thought. It is a densely wired neurological habit that activates without your conscious permission. Your brain has optimized itself to make you feel like a fraud with terrifying efficiency. The deep grooves of self-doubt have become your default operating system, completely overriding the much weaker neural pathways of confidence and self-assurance. If the subconscious mind is a blind, obedient womb, and the brain is heavily wired for anxiety, how do we possibly intervene? The answer lies in Neville Goddard's most famous and transformative work, Asterisk Feeling is the Secret Asterisk. Neville revealed that the subconscious mind does not speak the language of intellect, logic, or forced affirmations. You cannot rewire a deep-seated neurological habit by simply repeating hollow phrases like, "I am smart," while internally feeling terrified. The subconscious mind only speaks and understands the complex language of emotion. To the subconscious, feeling is the absolute truth. It is the only currency it accepts when deciding which ideas to incubate and which neural pathways to strengthen. When you try to logically convince yourself that you belong in your role, but your chest is tight with fear, the subconscious ignores the logic and absorbs the fear. Therefore, to permanently rewire imposter syndrome, we must stop trying to change our thoughts through sheer willpower. We must instead focus entirely on implanting a new dominant emotion, the feeling of quiet, unshakable confidence. This requires a radical shift in how you approach your internal world. You must learn to generate the emotional state of the expert before the external world validates you. When you successfully capture the genuine feeling of being secure in your abilities, you send a massive, undeniable signal to your subconscious mind. This new emotional signature acts as a wrecking ball to those old neural pathways, starving the imposter highway of its energy. As you sustain this new feeling, your brain begins to physically rewire itself, forging a new default pathway of mastery. To begin this rewiring process, you must first define exactly what the new emotional target is. Your actionable takeaway for today is to identify the physical sensation of being the undisputed expert in your field. Close your eyes and imagine that you have absolutely nothing left to prove to anyone, including yourself. Notice how that specific state feels inside your physical body. Does your breathing slow down? Do your shoulders drop? Or does the tension in your jaw completely release? This is not a feeling of euphoric excitement or arrogant superiority. It is a feeling of profound relief, grounded certainty, and boring, everyday normalcy. Memorize this exact physical sensation, because this quiet confidence is the specific emotional seed we are going to plant into your subconscious mind. You are learning the exact frequency of your new identity. Now that we know why the subconscious does this and the emotional language it requires to change, how do we practically hack this system? The conscious mind puts up a massive fight during the day, making it incredibly difficult to simply feel confident on command. But there is a specific window of time when your logical defenses completely collapse, leaving your subconscious wide open to new programming. In Part 3, I will teach you Neville's most powerful technique to bypass your waking resistance and physically rewire your brain while you sleep. What if the permanent cure to imposter syndrome does not require years of grueling therapy, endless positive affirmations, or desperately trying to prove your worth during the workday? What if the most profound neurological rewiring you can possibly achieve takes exactly 10 minutes a day, right as you are lying in bed? This is not a passive relaxation exercise or a standard guided meditation. You are about to learn how to intentionally hack the biological twilight zone between waking and sleeping. Welcome to Neville Goddard's most transformative method, the state akin to sleep, widely known as SATS. To understand why SATS is so ruthlessly effective at destroying imposter syndrome, we must look at what happens to your brainwaves when your head hits the pillow. During your normal waking hours, your brain operates in a beta brainwave state, which is highly analytical, alert, and deeply critical. In beta, your conscious mind acts as a heavily armed security guard, ruthlessly rejecting any thought that contradicts your current self-concept. If you try to tell yourself that you are a brilliant executive while in a beta state, the security guard immediately blocks it, reminding you of your perceived inadequacies. This is why trying to force confidence during a stressful workday usually backfires and creates even more internal friction. However, as you close your eyes and begin to drift off to sleep, your brain chemistry fundamentally shifts. You transition out of the critical beta state and descend into the slower, deeply relaxed frequency known as the theta brainwave state. This is the magical window of SATS, a hypnotic twilight zone where you are still faintly aware of your surroundings, but your physical body feels heavy and immobilized. In the theta state, the heavily armed security guard of your conscious mind finally clocks out and goes to sleep. Your subconscious mind is left completely unguarded, highly neuroplastic, and incredibly receptive to new programming. Neville Goddard understood this biological loophole decades before neuroscientists mapped the brain's frequencies. He realized that whatever you assume to be true in this drowsy, twilight state will bypass all logical resistance and drop directly into the subconscious womb. By intentionally entering SATS, you are no longer fighting the million tons of ice beneath the surface. You are gently reshaping it from the inside out. The subconscious mind cannot distinguish between a deeply felt imaginary act in the theta state and a physical event happening in the waking world. Therefore, if you fall asleep feeling like an absolute master of your craft, your brain will physically begin wiring the neural pathways of mastery. Before you can utilize this twilight state, you must prepare the exact psychological seed you are going to plant. This requires constructing a highly specific, mental mini-movie that implies your imposter syndrome has already been completely cured. This is known as your wish-fulfilled scene, and it must adhere to 3 strict rules to be effective. First, the scene must be incredibly short, ideally lasting only 5 to 10 seconds from start to finish. If your scene is too long or complex, your wandering mind will easily lose focus and drift into random, uncontrolled dreams. Second, your scene must imply the absolute end result of your success, not the process of getting there. You do not imagine yourself studying hard, practicing a speech, or trying to convince a client of your worth. Instead, you construct an event that would only happen after you have already been recognized as the undisputed expert in your field. For example, imagine a respected colleague firmly shaking your hand, looking you in the eye, and saying, "Your presentation was absolute genius. You are a master at this." This simple action implicitly confirms that the struggle is over, the anxiety is gone, and your competence is an established, undeniable fact. Third, and most importantly, this scene must be experienced entirely from the first-person perspective. You are not watching yourself on a movie screen like an audience member observing an actor. You must see the world through your own eyes, feeling the physical sensations of the environment exactly as you would in waking life. You must feel the texture of your colleague's hand in yours, hear the specific tone of their voice, and see the background of the office directly in front of you. If you view the scene from a third-person perspective, you are merely telling your subconscious that this success belongs to someone else. With your 5-second scene constructed, you are ready to execute the SATS process tonight as you lay in bed. Step 1 is to completely relax your physical body, lying flat on your back in a position where you will not be easily disturbed. Take several deep, slow breaths, consciously releasing the tension in your jaw, your shoulders, and your chest until your body feels entirely weightless. Step 2 is to allow yourself to naturally drift toward the very edge of sleep, entering that drowsy, heavy theta state. You must ride the delicate line between being relaxed enough to bypass the conscious mind, but awake enough to control your imagination. Once you have reached this twilight state, step 3 is to press play on your mental mini-movie. Bring your 5-second scene into your mind's eye and experience it from the first-person perspective. At first, the image might be blurry, or your mind might try to wander back to the anxieties of the workday. When this happens, simply catch your attention and gently force it back to the beginning of the scene, replaying the handshake and the compliment. You must loop this exact same 5-second scene over and over again, like a GIF playing on a continuous, unbroken cycle. As you loop the scene, you move into step 4, generating the sensory tones of reality. With each repetition of the loop, add more sensory details to make the imaginary act feel physically real. Feel the warmth of the handshake, hear the exact cadence of the spoken compliment, and most importantly, generate the emotional relief of being recognized as an expert. Finally, step 5 is to simply allow yourself to fall asleep while actively feeling the reality of the scene. You must carry the profound emotion of the wish fulfilled across the threshold of sleep, locking it directly into your subconscious mind for the rest of the night. When you successfully fall asleep in this state, your subconscious mind spends the next 8 hours incubating that exact emotion. It begins to rewrite the outdated lines of code, replacing the imposter anxiety with the undeniable feeling of belonging and mastery. You are effortlessly doing the heavy lifting of identity shifting while your conscious mind is completely powered down. This is how you systematically starve the neural pathways of self-doubt and pave a brand new highway of unshakable confidence. Your actionable takeaway for today is to script the exact architectural blueprint of your new identity. I want you to go into the comments section right now and draft your 5-second SATS scene. Write down exactly who is shaking your hand, what specific 5 words they are saying to validate your expertise, and where you are standing. By writing it out publicly, you are solidifying your intention and creating a clear, concrete script to memorize for tonight's practice. Keep it brief, keep it first person, and make sure it implies that your imposter syndrome is a thing of the past. You now possess the ultimate nighttime protocol to bypass your logical mind and reprogram your deepest subconscious beliefs. But what happens when the sun comes up, you walk into the office, and a sudden crisis immediately triggers your old feelings of being a fraud? You cannot just drop into a sleepy theta state in the middle of a chaotic board meeting to soothe your anxiety. In Part 4, we will tackle the crucial daytime strategy required to fiercely protect your new assumption. We will explore Neville Goddard's concept of the strict mental diet, teaching you exactly how to starve your imposter syndrome in real time while awake. You executed your nighttime SATS routine flawlessly, waking up feeling like an untouchable master of your craft. But the second you step into the office, reality strikes with a fumbled answer or a terse email from your boss. Instantly, the familiar panic floods your chest, and the imposter voice starts screaming that you have finally been exposed. You cannot drop into a sleepy theta state in the middle of a chaotic open-plan office to soothe your spiraling anxiety. Here is how you shut that panicked voice down permanently, right in the middle of your waking day. Neville Goddard taught a profound truth about our waking hours. Our inner conversations create our external circumstances. While SATS plants the seed of your new identity in the fertile soil of the subconscious, your daytime thoughts are the water and sunlight that either nourish or kill it. You cannot spend 10 minutes at night assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled, only to spend the next 16 hours awake affirming that you do not belong. The subconscious mind is always listening, and it operates strictly on a simple mathematical majority. If your dominant internal dialogue is laced with fear, self-doubt, and relentless criticism, that is the reality your brain will continue to wire. Think of your mind as a broadcasting station that is constantly transmitting your self-concept to the world around you. Every time you internally wince at a minor error or silently agree with the feeling of being a fraud, you are broadcasting a signal of incompetence. Your external environment simply mirrors this broadcast, manifesting as awkward interactions, missed opportunities, and a pervasive sense of inadequacy. To truly rewire imposter syndrome, you must take absolute, tyrannical control over this internal broadcasting station. You must become acutely aware of the silent, invisible conversations you are having with yourself while you answer emails, commute, or sit in meetings. This brings us to Neville's concept of the strict mental diet. Just as you would not expect to build a healthy physical body while exclusively eating toxic, processed garbage, you cannot build a confident self-concept while consuming toxic thoughts. A mental diet requires you to ruthlessly monitor your internal dialogue and immediately reject any thought that does not align with your new identity. You are no longer allowing the imposter voice to speak unchallenged in the theater of your mind. The moment you catch yourself thinking that you are a fraud who will soon be discovered, you must intervene. The secret to a successful mental diet is that you never actually fight the negative thought. Arguing with your imposter syndrome implies that the threat is real, which only feeds the anxiety and strengthens the old neural pathways. Instead of engaging in a mental wrestling match, you abruptly pivot your attention. You catch the fraudulent thought mid-sentence, cut it off, and immediately replace it with the assumption of your wish fulfilled. You calmly and firmly assert to yourself that you are highly qualified and entirely capable of handling the situation. At first, this pivot will feel entirely unnatural, and your logical mind will violently reject the new affirmation. You will likely have to pivot your thoughts 50 or 100 times on the very first day just to maintain baseline stability. But every single time you interrupt the old pattern and assert your new assumption, you are starving the neurological highway of self-doubt. You are actively depriving the imposter syndrome of the emotional energy it needs to survive. Through sheer, relentless repetition during your waking hours, the new assumption will begin to feel like your natural baseline. But what happens when you make a genuine, undeniable mistake at work? A failed presentation, a missed deadline, or a clumsy interaction is the ultimate trigger for imposter syndrome. Your brain immediately seizes upon this failure, holding it up as undeniable proof that you truly are an incompetent fake. If left unchecked, the subconscious mind will archive this embarrassing event as concrete evidence of your inadequacy. To prevent this, Neville Goddard introduced a radical daytime technique known as revision. Revision is the act of mentally replaying a negative event from your day, but intentionally changing the outcome to exactly what you wish had happened. You do not accept the failure as a permanent fact of your identity or your history. As soon as you have a quiet moment, you close your eyes and reconstruct the embarrassing scene in your imagination. If you stumbled through a vital presentation and saw your colleagues looking confused, you rewrite that specific memory. You visualize yourself delivering the presentation flawlessly, seeing your colleagues nodding in eager agreement and smiling. You must replay this revised version of events over and over in your mind until it feels completely real and the feeling of humiliation entirely evaporates. You are not trying to delude yourself into thinking the physical mistake never happened in the 3D world. Instead, you are hacking your brain's biological memory storage system to protect your self-concept. The subconscious mind cannot tell the difference between a vividly imagined memory and a physical event. By revising the scene, you force the subconscious to store the feeling of triumph rather than the feeling of fraudulent failure. This stops the imposter cycle dead in its tracks. Because the subconscious now holds a record of success instead of failure, it will not trigger paralyzing anxiety the next time you step up to present. You have effectively pruned away the toxic weed before it could take root in your self-concept. Revision acts as a real-time eraser for your mistakes, ensuring that your daytime blunders never become permanent scars on your identity. It is the ultimate safety net for your new, confident assumption, keeping your mental diet completely intact. Your actionable takeaway for today is to embark on a strict, 24-hour mental diet challenge. From the moment you wake up tomorrow, you must treat every self-deprecating thought as a hostile intruder. Do not let a single thought of incompetence finish its sentence in your mind. The instant you detect the feeling of being an imposter, abruptly pivot and mentally declare your absolute capability. You are the sole gatekeeper of your mind, and for the next 24 hours, the imposter is strictly denied entry. You now possess the complete mechanical framework to dismantle your self-doubt. You understand the theory, you have the nighttime SATs routine to plant the seed, and you have the daytime mental diet to protect it. But what happens when all of this exhausting mental effort finally pays off and becomes effortless? In our final episode, Part 5, we will discuss the ultimate goal of this entire process, shifting your complete identity and entering a state Neville called the Sabbath. We will explore what it feels like when you stop trying to convince yourself you belong, and you simply know that you do. At a certain point, you stop trying to convince yourself you belong, and you simply know you do. In Neville Goddard's teachings, this is the ultimate destination of your profound mental labor. You are no longer fighting off the phantom voices of self-doubt or aggressively policing your mental diet. The exhausting war against your own subconscious mind is finally over, and a deep, unshakable silence takes its place. Welcome to the final stage of your transformation, a psychological state of absolute rest that Neville called the Sabbath. The Sabbath is not a religious holiday or a physical day of the week. It is a definitive state of consciousness. It occurs the exact moment your subconscious mind fully accepts your new assumption as an absolute, undeniable fact. When you enter this state, the desperate need to force affirmations or perfectly visualize your success completely vanishes. You organically drop the intense techniques, the scripting, and the nighttime routines because you no longer feel a deficit in your reality. You cannot intensely desire something that you already possess, and you cannot pretend to be someone you already are. When it comes to conquering imposter syndrome, reaching the Sabbath is a deeply counterintuitive experience. You might expect to feel a constant, euphoric high of supreme confidence, but the reality is beautifully mundane. The anxiety simply drops away, leaving behind a normal, almost boring sense of belonging. You look around the boardroom, the studio, or the executive office and think, of course I am good at my job, why wouldn't I be? The extraordinary success you once placed on an untouchable pedestal has been permanently normalized into your everyday baseline. Once you hit this internal state of rest, you trigger a fascinating phenomenon Neville called the bridge of incident. Because your subconscious mind has locked in this new self-concept, your external reality is now mathematically forced to catch up. The world around you begins to shift, bend, and rearrange itself to perfectly mirror your quiet internal confidence. You will find yourself walking across a highly specific, unpredictable sequence of events that solidify your new identity in the physical world. This is where the magic of the law of assumption becomes tangibly visible to your logical mind. Suddenly, a senior mentor might pull you aside and spontaneously validate your expertise without you ever prompting them. You might be unexpectedly asked to lead a massive project because your boss intuitively senses a shift in your baseline authority. The people around you will begin treating you differently, not because you are manipulating them, but because you are broadcasting a completely new frequency. These events are never random coincidences or strokes of remarkably lucky timing. They are the direct, externalized manifestations of the new neurological blueprint you painstakingly wired in the dark. When this bridge unfolds, it is crucial that you do not panic or revert to your old programming. Your logical mind might briefly try to question why things are suddenly falling into place so effortlessly. You must simply observe these external validations with a quiet smile, internally acknowledging that you created them. You accept the praise, the promotions, and the respect gracefully because they perfectly align with the identity you have already assumed. The physical world is merely delivering the receipt for the internal transaction you completed weeks ago. To ensure this feeling of mastery becomes a permanent fixture of your life, we must look at the deepest layer of Neville's philosophy. Before you are a corporate executive, an artist, a student, or an expert, you are simply pure, unconditioned awareness. Neville taught that the foundational core of your existence is the limitless consciousness of I am. Imposter syndrome can only survive when you attach a negative, limiting label to this pure awareness, such as I am a fake, or I am unqualified. The imposter illusion requires a specific costume to wear, a defined role to constantly critique and tear down. When you mentally strip away all the external labels, titles, and societal expectations, you are left with pure, unadulterated I am consciousness. Pure awareness cannot possibly be an imposter because it has nothing to prove and no standard to fall short of. It does not possess a resume, it does not fear failure, and it does not seek the validation of a boardroom. By reconnecting with this formless state, you realize that your core identity is entirely untouchable by human judgment. You are stepping out of the vulnerable ego and into the impenetrable fortress of absolute presence. Whenever you feel a faint whisper of the old anxiety trying to return, do not fight the specific label. Instead, close your eyes and anchor yourself deeply into the simple, undeniable fact that you exist. Breathe in and silently say, I. Breathe out and silently say, AM, completely detaching from the corporate or creative identity causing the stress. By resting in this pure consciousness, the imposter illusion entirely dissolves into the ether. You realize that your worth was never tied to your output, and you are worthy of taking up space simply because you are here. Let us briefly recap the complete architectural blueprint you now possess to permanently master your mind. In Part 1, we recognize that imposter syndrome is not a character flaw, but a faulty, outdated illusion holding you hostage. In Part 2, we uncovered how your subconscious mind blindly accepts assumptions and wires them into deep neurological highways. Part 3 gave you the nighttime SATS protocol to bypass your logical defenses and plant the seed of mastery while you sleep. Part 4 armed you with the daytime mental diet and revision techniques to fiercely protect that seed in real time. And here, in Part 5, you have learned how to embody the Sabbath, allowing your external world to naturally conform to your new self-concept. Imposter syndrome is just an old script playing in a crumbling theater you no longer attend. You hold the pen, you write the code, and you dictate the exact terms of your own reality. Assume your greatness, step into the light, and never apologize for the space you rightfully occupy. Subscribe for more deep dives into the mechanics of the mind. And please share this entire series with someone who desperately needs to see their own worth.